JJ Starling returned. And yet the same old for Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
No excuses. That is the theme of this post-game reaction podcast here on Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, this is a post-game reaction podcast because in case you missed it, Syracuse Basketball played a game this evening. They played at Florida State, but they only played one half in Florida State. They flew home, and I didn't recognize actually I did. I take that back. I did recognize the team on the floor in the second half. Syracuse Basketball loses this game 90-74 in Tallahassee. And there are no excuses. And we're going to talk about that plenty here in this post-game reaction. Eric Devendorf, he was the color commentator in this game. Had some choice words for the fan base. And we're going to talk about it here, especially after a 16-point loss. He said it in the first half. It was actually a pretty good game at that point, but it aged like milk if you're talking about one game. And then to end the podcast, I'm going to ask you guys a question, which you can answer right now if you want. Where are the wins coming from for Syracuse basketball? Where are they? I think they're going to win between 5 and 9 ACC games, but honestly, I'm struggling to find the 5 wins. That's the issue. Leave a comment in the comment section below because I'm stumped right now. Before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. No excuses. None. JJ Starling, Syracuse basketball's best player. He's been out for over a month, if you recall, because he broke his left hand in practice the day before the Tennessee game, which was on December 3rd. He's back. No limitations either, at least from my eye test. I didn't see any laboring on the floor or anything different. I could be wrong. Maybe. Maybe he's still, I guess I'll say he might have been rusty, and that's about it. But he was back, and he was starting, and he played a good number of minutes in this one. Played 32 minutes. That's about what he usually plays. So he's back. So there goes that excuse that JJ Starling is gone. Chris Bell. I've criticized Chris Bell a lot here on this podcast, and it's been fair criticism. Chris Bell, prior to tonight, had not hit a single three-pointer since that Tennessee game. It's been a long time. It's been over a month. But tonight, you know what, Chris Bell? I'm not really going to criticize him. There's nothing to criticize. Adrian Autry had him come off the bench for this game and said he had Lucas Taylor start the game. So that was a lineup change right there. And Chris Bell played 22 minutes. And in those 22 minutes, he led the team in scoring. He had 18 points in only 5 field goal attempts, and he was 4 of 4 from three-point. Say what you want about Chris Bell. And look, I understand that he had no rebounds. He had no assists. He's not a great defender. I get it. But when Chris Bell gives you 18 points and he's 4 of 4 from 3, you're going to take that, right? That's what we at least want from Chris Bell. At minimum, that's what we want. So there goes that excuse. You got Chris Bell hot. You got JJ Starling back in the lineup. Kyle Cuff, once again, he gives you more than what you can really ask for from him. Again, sorry, if you catch my eyes drifting, it's because I pull up the stats here on my computer as I record this podcast. Kyle Cuff finished with 10 points in 14 minutes. Kyle Cuff, again. At this point, I'm not even really surprised because he's actually played pretty well. And finally, Florida State. And if you're a Florida State fan stumbling upon this podcast, I really don't mean this with any disrespect. I just want to point out how absurd it is that Syracuse basketball lost this game by 16 points and got completely run off the floor in the second half. Florida State heading into this game was 82nd in the net rankings. That's not very good. Now, Syracuse is a lot worse. They were 159, and I imagine they're going to go even lower after this one. But Florida State's 82nd. That's not great. I know they have a good record, but prior to tonight, they had 0 power conference wins. None. And yet Syracuse loses this game by 16 points. They get crushed in the second half. There are no excuses. None. You can't say the team was too good that you were playing against. You can't say that you're missing your best player. You can't say that Chris Bell's underachieving. And you can't say that you didn't get any production from your bench. Kyle Cuff gives you 10 points in 14 minutes. This should have, at minimum, be a close game that maybe goes to the wire, and we're talking about how, once again, they can't get it done late. They lose the game by 4 points because X, Y, Z reason. Nope, they lose by 16. They gave up 90 points as a team to Florida State. I'm truly at kind of a loss for words, which, if you are a loyal follower or listener to this podcast and you've been following along for a long time with myself, you know that I like to talk. You know that I'm very opinionated. But it's hard to come up with new things to say about this team. Other than that, they're just not good in any real aspect of the game. Players, coaches included. Did they even try defensively? Like, seriously. 90 points? I can't tell you how many times I had to write in my notes, ex-player on Florida State gets to the rim easily and dunks the ball. Alley-oop. This player is left wide open for a three-pointer and drills it. There was a miscommunication here, and it leads to this player open. I can't even say, well, it happened at this point in the second half. You know I like to do that. I like to tell you, like, at this point in the game, there was this sloppy play. I can give you an example in a second. But honestly, there's so many to count, then why even bother? I can give you one terrible sequence from Jaquan Carlos in the second half, and it was part of the run that Florida State started to go on. It was early in the second half. Syracuse is only down by 4 points, and Jaquan Carlos just throws it. I don't know. He had the worst 30-second sequence of his life. Throws it right to a Florida State player. It leads to an easy points for them. Has another turnover, but luckily, Florida State doesn't capitalize on that possession. But I think that was really the start of the run, if I'm not mistaken. When I look back at my notes, it was terrible. Absolutely terrible. To Autry's credit, at least he took Carlos out after that sequence. And I'm not trying to pin the loss just on Jaquan Carlos, but it really was at the beginning point of the run. They were only down 7. I should correct myself. They were down 7. He has a terrible turnover. It leads to a Florida State dunk, and then they're down by 9. But there's so many of those bad plays that you can't even just put it on Carlos. You have to kind of put it on everyone. This is hard. It's really hard to do. Syracuse basketball loses at Florida State 90-74, even with JJ Starling back, even with Chris Bell finally getting it going. And I guess that might be the only positive of the day. I guess one of two positives. You're not playing the greatest team. Kyle Cuff, once again, has a decent performance. And the Orange lose by 16 points. What else is new? I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse, and this is a post-game reaction podcast. Coming up, Eric Devendorf, a former Syracuse great, had some choice words in the first half of this game, and we're going to talk about it here on Locked On Syracuse. So stick with me here. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players are going to score a touchdown or how many points each team is going to score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Former Syracuse great Eric Devendorf had some choice words during this game. Eric Devendorf, for those that don't know, played for Syracuse from 2005 to 2009 and was a very, very good player. Dare I say, a great player, like I just said. He was the color commentator in this game. So he's sitting courtside watching it. Look, he had some choice words. And before I get to my thoughts on them, I'm going to put the statement of what he said on the screen, and then I'm going to read it to you guys for those that are listening to this podcast, not watching, okay? So here it goes. From Brent Axe, and shout out to Syracuse.com's Brent Axe for transcribing this. Here's the quote from Eric Devendorf. I know they are struggling this season, and the fans are putting a lot of heat on Coach Red. But like I said, 20 wins the first season. This year hasn't gone as imagined so far. All you guys on social media saying this and that, you really have not a clue. What goes on behind the scenes and all the stuff they have to deal with, Coach Red is doing as well of a job as he can. He'll continue to get better. Okay, so I got a lot of thoughts on this because I was hearing what Eric Devendorf was saying, and he also went on to say that Coach Autry was, quote, doing an unbelievable job. Yes. You can go back and check the tape and rewind the game. He did say that in the first half. And he also had some comments about how it's tough with the transfer portal and NIL and the roster turnover and getting these guys to buy in. He had a lot of comments. But I'm going to provide some commentary on them. So shout out to Eric Devendorf for providing me some good content. Okay? First of all, I'm Jackson Holzer. I am a podcast host. Now, look, I am a Syracuse fan, and I am a Syracuse alum, and I absolutely love sports in general. Love them. Watch them all the time, beyond just Syracuse. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know more about basketball than someone who played at a Division I level, especially someone who was really good in the Division I level. Okay, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just going to give you my thoughts on what his comments were. First of all, he says that the thing about the 20 wins. 20 wins is good. Don't get me wrong. 20 wins is good for Coach Autry, especially in his first season. But it wasn't good enough. See, I was encouraged with Syracuse basketball after last season. You can go back to those podcasts at the end of the season last year. They're very old, so please don't judge me on them. They're old. I promise I've gotten a little bit better since then. But I was encouraged, and I was excited heading into this season. I thought at minimum this team could be a bubble team. At minimum, and maybe at maximum, if things kind of go their way, they'll be in the NCAA tournament. And who knows what they'll do in the NCAA tournament because it's the tournament, but maybe they can be like an 8-9 seed and hopefully you can squeak out a run to like the Sweet 16. Maybe that, right? Something cool. But obviously the year has not gone as we would have hoped. And 20 wins is good, but it's not good enough. They didn't make the NCAA tournament last year. To put it in perspective, here's the deal, all right? Let's say that Coach Autry sticks around Syracuse for 10 years, and every year they win 20 games. Exactly 20 games every year. But here's the kicker. They're never going to make the NCAA tournament in any of those 10 seasons. So they'll continue to win 20 games, but it'll never be good enough to make the tournament. Would you be happy? I don't think so. See, the goal is to get to the NCAA tournament and then to get to the Final Four and then to ultimately win the damn thing. So winning 20 games in year one, it was encouraging, but I'm not going to sit here and raise the pom-poms and everything after this season just because he won 20 games when that was not enough to make the NCAA tournament. If they had made the NCAA tournament last season, I would give Coach Autry a longer leash. I would. But they didn't. 20 wins was not good enough. The next thing that I would like to point out, and Brent Axe from Syracuse.com actually pointed it out. What's going on behind the scenes? See, Eric Devendorf, he said that we don't know what's going on behind the scenes in his statement. Well, what is it? See, that raises questions. If Eric Devendorf would like to explain to us, I'd be happy to listen. Please tell me. Tell me what's going on so that I can be more informed and I can be more educated and I can tell you guys, hey, this is what Eric Devendorf is seeing. This is what he is hearing from the coaching staff. This is what he's hearing from the players. But he makes a statement and now I'm questioning what's going on. Is there someone above Adrian Autry that's maybe calling the shots? I don't know. I have no idea. How could I know now? Because you just raised the question without giving us the answer to it. And finally, rebuilds don't take a long time in college sports, especially in college basketball. They don't take a long time if you're a program that knows what it's doing. Go look at Louisville. Louisville fired Kenny Payne after 2 years. He was a disaster. 4 wins in year one, 8 wins in year two, and they let him go. They said no more to Kenny Payne. And this season, they hire Pat Kelsey. They already have more wins this year than they've had last season and the year before. They are a much better team. Are they going to make the NCAA tournament? Right now, they're on the bubble. They just got a nice win at Virginia. That should certainly help them. It was a blowout win. Louisville's a better team now. They fired their coach after 2 years. It seems like their next guy in Pat Kelsey might have been the right choice. Rebuilds don't have to take a long time. How about Michigan? Michigan was awful last season. Do you remember how bad Michigan was? Terrible. Well, now look at them this year. They bring in Dusty May, and they're back to being a pretty good program once again. Actually, they're better than a pretty good program, but you get my point. I'm not trying to... You get my point. They're a much better team this season. And like Louisville, they already have more wins than they had the previous year. And the guy that they fired was Juwan Howard. Juwan Howard had made the NCAA tournament in 2 of his previous 3 seasons. His first season, they would have, I think, made the tournament, but COVID happened, and so the whole postseason was canceled. 1 year, I believe they were a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Did Juwan Howard deserve a longer leash? I don't know. But they decided to fire him, and it looks like it was the right call because they brought in someone better. See, that's the thing. Rebuilds don't have to take a long time, especially with this landscape. You can get better in 1 year with the transfer portal or a high school recruiting class, and vice versa. You can go from being outstanding 1 year to being absolutely garbage the next year. See, a lot of you guys who are followers and listeners to this podcast, you guys grew up in the age where you'd recruit from high school, the players would stay for 4 or 5 years, and then they would go. And so a rebuild would take a long time because you needed your players to come in and stack recruiting classes. But in this day and age, it's every year is different, and every program deals with the same. Rebuilds don't have to take a long time, guys. All this to say is this. Look, I don't think Adrian Autry deserves another year. And I have gone through fact and fact as to why I don't believe that. His recruiting rankings are strong, yet the results are not there through 2 years. You can make intelligent points about how Adrian Autry should come back for another season. You can argue that to me, and I will listen to it. Hey, Jackson, I know you want the coach gone, but if you fire the coach, well, you better have a really good backup plan because you might lose the 2025 recruiting class, which is top 10 in the country. Okay, I'll listen. I'll listen on that, right? Hey, Jackson, you're maybe being a little bit extreme. I think Adrian Autry deserves one more year. He deserves one more chance. I think firing coach after year 2, it's not quite Kenny Payne because Kenny Payne was 4 wins and 8 wins. Autry did win 20 games last year. Okay, fine, I'll listen. I still think he deserves to be gone, and I respectfully disagree if you feel that he should come back. But my point here is that, saying that we don't have a clue, I would love for Eric Devendorf to explain why. Why don't myself and many other fans have no clue? That's what I would like to know. Syracuse basketball loses to Florida State 90-74 in Tallahassee. It was not pretty in the second half. We just talked about Eric Devendorf's comments. I told you guys in the beginning why there were no excuses. And now coming up, we're going to talk about if and when Syracuse basketball is going to get another win this season. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Who's going to win more games this season? Syracuse Football, 10-3, or Syracuse Basketball, currently sitting with 6 wins? Who's going to win more games this season? That's your homework assignment, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. I'm assigning homework here on Locked On Syracuse. You tell me in the comment section right now. Who's going to win more games? Syracuse Football, 10 wins, or Syracuse Basketball, currently at 6-8, with no more cupcakes the rest of the way. All ACC competition from here on out. But really, the point of this exercise is, how many more games are they going to win? Are they going to win any more games? I don't know. Now, I did poll Friday yesterday. And the consensus, not the consensus, but the majority of you guys believe that Syracuse basketball will win between 5 and 9 ACC games. 5 and 9, between that number. Well, they're 0-3 right now. And I don't know where the wins are coming from. Maybe they can beat Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's not very high in the net rankings. That's on Tuesday. Sure, that's a winnable game, I guess. At Boston College on Saturday, so I guess they have 2 more winnable games coming up. But this game was somewhat winnable. Florida State's not some juggernaut here. They got blown out by 16 points. It's just embarrassing. You got Notre Dame at home, but in case you missed it, Marcus Burton is back for Notre Dame. So that game won't be easy. At Miami, at Virginia Tech. Virginia's not very good this season. Maybe you can win those games. Maybe there's an upset here or there. I guess the point of this is to tell you guys there are no circled wins on Syracuse's schedule anymore. If you're asking me what's a circled win, what is it? It's when you get a schedule at the beginning of the year, right? And you go through the schedule and you're like, okay, Syracuse is going to have to go to North Carolina in this game. That's tough. That's going to be tough, right? Oh, but then you know what? We got Albany at home on Tuesday, December 27th, making up a date. That's a win right there. That's called a circled win. You know you're going to win that game. You can bank it in, right? And even with ACC competition, while there is no quote-unquote circled win because you're playing a team within your league, so they're going to have somewhat similar talent, you know if Duke is playing Miami at home this season, they're going to crush them in all likelihood. That's about as close of a circled win as you're going to get. And for Syracuse basketball, when you look at their schedule, I don't care if they are playing a really bad team, even on their home floor. And the reason why I don't care is because Syracuse basketball is not a good team either. So there are no circled wins for the Orange from here on out. I don't know if they are going to win 5 games in the conference. I don't know if they're going to make the ACC tournament. I don't know. Maybe you guys can help me out. Leave a comment in the comments section below. Is Syracuse basketball going to somehow win 5 games in the conference? They are now 0-8 against power conference competition this season. 0-8. Their 6 wins have come against, let's face it, not very good teams. And for the most part, they didn't even dominate those teams. This is ugly. Really, really ugly here. And it sucks. It does suck. I don't think any of the players want to lose. I don't think the coaches want to lose. I certainly don't want them to lose. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again on this podcast. I would rather this team win every single game and get no viewership on this podcast than have them have this type of season and get a bunch of viewership. I want them to win. But I don't know. I wish I could tell you guys, hey, they're going to win this game. They're going to have this stretch right here. I can't find it. I can't. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Locked On ACC podcast, Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs. They keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Syracuse basketball loses at Florida State tonight, 90-74. I'm Jackson Holzer, and this is Locked On Syracuse, and this has been a post-game reaction podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And folks, Syracuse basketball, I'm going to continue giving post-game reaction episodes. But until further notice, it's going to be a lot more football talk here on this podcast. I will see you all again very soon.